So we have a little time together here, and I've been thinking over the last week or so what we could talk about, which is a little bit of a challenge to me because I speak all over the planet in all different cultures, all different kinds of people, and a lot of times I'm talking to people who are brand new at knowing that they create their own realities, brand new at knowing that they have a power within them that they have turned on all the time that's creating some kind of a reality. It's like a motor that's going and the car's in gear, but we're not always at the driver's seat. Some of us are sitting in the back seat and the car's just going wherever it's going, but it's still our car. Remember this great story about a guy in San Francisco goes up to the top of this hill and he starts the engine and he puts the car in gear and he gets it going down this hill, and then he climbs in the back seat and covers his head. And the car goes flying down the hill and it bangs off of a few other cars and takes off a fire hydrant and wipes out a little fruit stand. And finally, down in the marine, it comes to a stop against the seawall. And the police come right away to get this guy. And he says, wait a minute, I was in the back seat. I wasn't even driving. And how many times around the world I've seen people whose lives were a disaster and they were in the back seat. And the reason they were in the back seat, and see if this works for any people you know, the reason they were in the back seat was because they didn't think they could drive. And they thought that if they got in the front seat and took a hold of the steering wheel, that if anything went wrong, it would be their fault. And they didn't want it to be their fault, so they abdicated their responsibilities and their power to somebody or something else. And a lot of times we abdicate that power to God, to what we call God. It's not really God. It's a metaphor for God. When you see a little kid sitting on the floor watching television and you say, and maybe there's a movie on with Sidney Poitier. We saw one last night. Sidney Poitier, and so you say to the kid, what are you doing? He says, I'm watching Sidney Poitier. What's the kid really doing? He's looking at a piece of glass. Really watching some light dancing around behind a piece of glass. Is that Sidney Poitier? Who is that? What is that? It's a metaphor. It's an example of. It's a picture of. And quite often that's how we worship God. We have this picture in our minds. And we're taught that. We're taught that God is this white guy with a beard, and there's a picture of him on the Sistine Chapel ceiling, and we're pretty sure that's who it is. But the first commandment, I am the Lord thy God, thou shalt not have, what? Strange gods before me. And who said that? Who said that? The first time that we ever heard of that, it came from a fellow named Moses who had gone up on the mountain and brought that word back down. And as the story goes, he was up on the mountain, and this white guy with the beard came to him and said, I am the... Well, wait a minute. No, that's not the way it happened. He got that message from a burning bush. And what does that mean, a burning bush? Because these two wonderful people that were just up here could have told us that that bush could have been burning with flowers. It could have been burning with the wonderful leaves of autumn. It could have been burning with the morning sunlight glistening off of its wet leaves. But whatever happened, it opened his heart, and he finally looked, and he finally listened, and he finally saw that this is God, and I am God. Don't have any false gods before me. Not because if you do, you'll go to hell or some silly thing like that, but because if you do, you fall out of grace. And if you fall out of grace, your life stops working. Because we are all a part of this wonderful river of life that's called grace. Another word for grace is love, isn't it? Jesus said the first commandment, the only commandment I give you, all the rest of the commandments are tucked inside of that commandment, is love. So that's grace. The flowing energy of life is grace. And when we allow ourselves to start looking for someone to come and save us, something that's going to happen out there, we're overlooking, that is looking over, looking beyond What's really happening are right around us and inside of us all the time, which is the living, being breath of God, the breath of God, which is grace. And it's here with us right now in this room. It's with you all the time in your life. Now, there's some folks here tonight who have a loneliness in their hearts, who are thinking, I feel unfulfilled in my relationships, and I'm wondering if I'm going to have to go through my entire life like this. Or I have this disease, and I can't quite seem to shake it. And it just keeps preying on my body. And every day that goes by, I begin to wonder, is this disease going to finally take me? Or am I just going to be suffering with this for the rest of my life? And some of us are saying, I'm not pleased with my life. I'm not pleased with the things that are going on in my life. I'm not pleased with the way things are working in my family. I'm not doing the job I want to do. This is not the work that I wanted to do. When I get up and go to work and do my job and come back home, I'm unfulfilled. I've got a few dollars that'll pay a little bit of rent and buy me a bottle of beer and a movie for Saturday night, but I'm unfulfilled. And when's that going to change? How is that going to change? People here tonight who are suffering financially, this terrible, terrible economic crisis we have going on in America and around the world, people who are suffering financially, maybe thinking they might lose their homes. Some of you have lost your jobs. What are we going to do about that? What's going to change that? And then, of course, there's someone who doesn't have any of those problems, who's just filled with joy and peace and love, and, oh wait, she just left. I know all about this stuff, you see, because I'm just like you. I'm struggling with it too. We're like salmon going up the river. We're always struggling. And that's the way it's supposed to be, incidentally. If anybody comes along and tells us, hey, we can do this real easy, you know that's a charlatan. You know that's a con. Because it's not easy. And it's not supposed to be easy.